All right, so this is the n-leaved rows project that comes in the chapter scripts. So we've got a painter, we've got a button, there's a display up here for the variable n. And under variables, we can turn that on or off. And it says when I receive the redraw, the pointer is going to go to 0, 0, do some pen settings. It's going to set A to a specific value, and it's going to call the procedure called rows. Now, at the moment, rows has no parameters. Rows just runs. Rows sets a variable called theta to 0. It's going to repeat 360 times. Okay, we've played with 360 before, right? When we were rotating a sprite, making circles. It's going to pick the pen up. It's going to go to a specific position. It's going to point in direction theta, and then it's going to move a certain number of steps from this wild calculation right here. This, again, if you want to learn more about how this calculation works, you should take a class called trigonometry. It's a pre-calculus class. We're just going to use it and not worry about how it works too much. Theta is going to change by 1. It's going to loop through again and run that 360 times. Okay. What does the button do? The button, when the sprite is clicked, which is that draw button, redraw button, it's going to broadcast redraw. And that's when the pen does its redraw thing, which is this and the rows, and the stage here has no code. All right, so just run it by clicking the redraw button. Now, again, notice what's going on here. Inside the loop, we've got pen up. We go to a specific spot. We point in direction theta, and then we move, and then we put the pen back down, and then we change theta. And then we go back into the loop, picking the pen up, right? So we're just dropping the pen down to make a dot, basically, with a little bit of a move going on too. And the move happens in between the pen up and the pen down. Okay, so it's not continuously trying to trace like we've done with sprites in the past. So let's see. Notice that we have an A here set to 100. We have a theta set to 0. We're changing theta. We're not changing A anywhere. And there's another variable called n inside here. And at the moment, if I click n back on, which yours might be, n is set to 4. Now we can change n to 4. Notice this one has a slider. My previous variable displays did not have a slider. So a note on that, if you right click on a variable display, then you get options, which are normal readout, large readout, slider, change slider range. So normal readout is what we typically get. We get the name of the variable and a little orange box that says the current value of the variable. The large readout just shows the value without stating which variable it is. Right click again, and the slider gives us this slider to play with. And this one looks like it's set to be whole numbers 1 through 10. It was set at 4. I'm going to change it to 6 and see what happens. Click redraw. Okay, a little different than it appeared before. I'm going to set n to 2, redraw. Cool. All right. So it has different behavior depending on what you set n to. Okay, so I'm just going to pause here for a minute. Try a few different numbers. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Look at them. Do you notice anything about what's happening there? And then we'll play around with the you try it. And again, we could speed this up if we wanted to by editing the rows block and have it run without screen refresh. So then it'll take out most of minimize the pausing that happens. So if I redraw then, it's going to redraw pretty quick. So there's 3. There's 2. There's 4. Interesting. 4 versus 3. 3 has 3 loops. 4 has 8. 5 has 5 loops. Guess how many 6 is going to have? 12. Yeah, it turns out with the way we're drawing this, which is a consequence of this set of green blocks here, if it's an odd number, you get exactly that many petals on your rows. If it's an even number, you always get twice as many. The A, so the You Try It said mess around with A and see what happens. It recommended adding a slider for A. So if I wanted to add a slider for A, what I would do is in the variables section, I would click the check mark next to A, which makes it display. And then I would right click on A's display and choose the slider option. And now the slider, if you grab the blue dot in the slider, you can change it, and it's changing by whole numbers. And in this case, it's going to go from 0 to 100. So I'm going to drop it down to say 70-ish. Close enough. Oh, I'm going to move it out of the way of the redraw and redraw. Oh. What happened? Yeah, it's setting it to 100 in the code here. Okay. So we've got to do something about that. So let's see, what can we do about that? Well, we could pull the set out. Oops. Completely. Put the rows back in. You can then go over here and set A. A is located already inside the block. Let's see if that works. Let's make it a little smaller. So there are other ways to modify it. That's the easiest way we could go about doing it, by putting the slider in there, let the user mess around with it. If we don't like the values the slider is using, right click on the slider, change slider range, and then you can take some control over it. Like if we make it 0, it's not going to draw anything. So I'm going to have to make it bigger than 0. So maybe we want to see roses with petal sizes of like 20 to maybe 200. So then I could make a bigger rose. Okay. Now, making a bigger rose like that, now the points are farther apart than they were before. So that's something we could try to figure out how to modify the rose procedure to, if it gets bigger, to add more points somehow. Okay. And we did something kind of like that when we were playing around with drawing different size polygons. So there is a way to mess around and do that and still get a rose, but with more points. I'm going to hold off on that here and not do it. But again, feel free to play around with that. Let's see, suppose we wanted to give the rose a parameter like color. How could we do that?
Change pen color.
Yeah, we could do a change pen color. We could add another variable slider, and then we could give the rose a parameter for the color with the slider to go in there. If you want to add a parameter to a function, then you would have to redefine the function by right-clicking on it and edit the block. And then you could add in text or number input to mess around inside the rows function. Okay. Leave that alone. All right, we did it.